Thank you for joining us today at the Chai Academy. Apologize for the delay. I actually started the class on my I believe I started on my personal page. So yeah, I apologize. So this is a continuation of yesterday's class, a rarity. We don't usually run over, but we're going to clarify and we're going to explain, elucidate what we discussed yesterday. So therefore, you'll be able to understand today's class. And it is a fascinating lesson. It is an incredible lesson. So bear with us. So we posed a question yesterday. The question was why is Moses the only character in the entire Torah who has an Egyptian name? Right? The Torah tells us how important the names are of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, Yehuda, all the names of the 12 tribes. Each one is a reflection of the energy of the soul. And yet, Moshe's given Hebrew name was Tuvia by his parents, and the name Moshe, Moses, was a given name by an Egyptian princess who saved him from the Nile Delta. Moshe was placed in a basket because of the tyrant's decree, Pharaoh's decree. And the daughter of Pharaoh, she came to bathe and she hears a cry. She grabs the basket and she sees it's a Hebrew child, and she picks it up and she decided at that moment she's going to keep him. Moshe's sister Miriam said, "Let me find a wet nurse for him." She was standing there to see what happened. Moshe was brought to his natural mother, his biological mother. She nursed him for a few years. He was known as Tuvia, given back after he was weaned to the daughter of Pharaoh, Bisya, and she called him Moshe. Torah testifies she called him Moshe because he was dragged out of the river. It's a non-Jewish name. It's not his parents' name. And you could, the Torah could say sometimes Tuvia, sometimes Moshe, as it does with Jacob and Israel. Nothing. You never hear Tuvia. You only hear Moshe. Tuvia's name is eclipsed by Moshe. And to add to the conundrum is that we know that the Talmud says there were 3 reasons why the Hebrews were merited to be redeemed from Egypt. One of them was their dress. They always dressed like a Hebrew. They didn't walk like an Egyptian or dress like an Egyptian. They didn't talk like an Egyptian. They kept their own language, their Hebrew language, and they kept their Hebrew names. So they may have been given slave names, but between themselves, they had names that they were born with, Hebrew names. Moshe was also born with a Hebrew name, yet he was completely stripped from him, and he was never referred to by that name. Not by anybody, and not by God in the Torah. Ever. So the question is, why was the name Tuvia stripped? And why was he not called Tuvia? And the same question on the flip side of the coin, why was it so important to God that he be called Moshe and not by his Hebrew name and not by his given name? Why was he called by this Egyptian name given to him by the daughter of the greatest tyrant that ever lived up until Hitler? Or up until Stalin, or up until Pol Pot, and I'm sure there were. But what gives here? So that was the first question we asked yesterday. The second question we asked was that Moshe, as the Torah testifies, was the prince of Egypt. Pharaoh had put him in charge. Vayigdal anar, and the Moshe grew up, and he grew up in not only physical stature, but in the stature of the hierarchy of the royal table. King Pharaoh and his round table, Moshe sat to Pharaoh's right. Very powerful and influential figure. Very, very powerful and influential figure. So the question is, why? Why did Moshe, as the Torah testifies, that Moshe walked out, he sees an Egyptian kill a Hebrew slave, beat a Hebrew slave. Moshe ran over and killed. I'm not sure why. Moshe ran over and killed the Egyptian. Why? By killing the Egyptian, it made him a fugitive. He either got killed by Pharaoh, as the Torah testifies, Pharaoh wanted his head for killing an Egyptian officer and defending a Hebrew, somebody of the inferior race. And he had to run. He had to run. He had to run for his life. Right? In the times of the Spanish Inquisition, it's interesting, is that you were, in 1492, you were given three choices. You either leave the country in 1492, in August of 1492, or you convert to Christianity, or you die. Moshe was given two choices: flee or die, and he fled. Now, Moshe was a member of the palace. He had it all. He lived in the lap of luxury. He had, the royal servants bathe him and fan him, and exotic caviar, gourmet olive oil, and virgin press, and robust taste, and the highest grade of sesame seeds and tofu, and he gave that all up. But more importantly, he gave up influence. He killed the Egyptian, and because of that, he no longer could help any further Jew, any further Hebrew slave. He had to run. If he didn't kill the Egyptian, he could have gone back, been in the palace, continued to grow in stature. Shabbat Shalom, Susan. Continued to grow in stature and influence, Pharaoh. And if he couldn't influence Pharaoh, bide your time, buddy. There will be a time where you'll have so much influence you could end genocide. Right? You could be the great Moses that ended genocide. But he didn't. He on an impulse he killed the Egyptian soldier, which caused him to flee, become homeless, no influence, and he had to live on the street until Jethro and Midian took him in. Why do that? Why? He didn't use his common sense, it seems. Logic would dictate, live another day, save tens and hundreds, and then thousands, then tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands, millions of Jews, just by being patient, by you acting like a fanatic, a jihad, and you killed the Egyptian soldier. You lost every ounce of influence you had, and you became a fugitive, worthless. Why'd he do it? And the answer to that is because he couldn't bear to see what he saw. He was overcome with emotion. And yes, he did act impulsively. He did. If he would have listened to me, he wouldn't have killed the guy. If I was Moses, I would have run back to the palace. I would have cried in my pillow. I would have taken a Zantac, gone to sleep, woke up in the morning, and had a coffee of the finest origin, followed by some Tito's vodka, and I would have been fine. Didn't listen to me. He killed the Egyptian because he was incensed to witness. He looked to and fro, he saw nobody was around, and he killed the guy. He lost it all because he killed the guy, because he was caught. Why risk it? All his influence. And he had to leave, and only 60 years later come back and confront Pharaoh. Why do that? Why do that? On the other hand, we find, paradoxically, that if Moses would have gone back to the palace and not killed the Egyptian, and he would have been just a regular royal prince who was in charge of trade or economy or transportation or finance or whatever, COVID, he wouldn't have become famous. The fact, he just would have, okay, that's the story. He wouldn't have had to leave. He never would have met God at the burning bush, and he would have just been another person that lived and died. The fact that he killed the Egyptian, he had to flee. So I'm saying this as ironically, he killed the Egyptian, he had to flee, he became a nobody, and he became just a shepherd. Eventually, he met God and things worked out where he came back and took the Jews out of Egypt. But those 60 years that he fled, you gotta believe there were 100,000 Jews that were killed. He could have stopped it. Who knows? We don't know, because he didn't allow it to happen. He acted on impulse. He acted fanatically. Why'd you do that, Moshe? Why'd you act fanatically? We understand that you were overcome with emotion. But we're taught that's a challenge in our life, right? We're all overcome with emotion. If each and every one of us acted emotionally when we're the highest peak of frustration, or the most emotional part of us comes out, right? We could never stay married, because we would say things or do things in a moment of intense emotion. We couldn't have a job, answer to somebody, to our boss. We couldn't have employees if we were a boss, because we would fire them under intense emotion. Our kids probably wouldn't talk to us. We would lose all the friends we have, and we would have fired our stockbroker a long time ago. Why is it that we still have a spouse? Why is it that we still have kids and a job and a stockbroker? It's because we don't act out of emotion. We process it. Sometimes we do, and it's a mistake. But we process it, and we have mind over matter, and we think a little bit, okay, let me curb my emotion right now, and let me see how to best handle it. I don't want to fire this employee because they're a good employee, but let me think about what to do. Moshe gave it no thought. He saw this guy, killed him. It's not what we do. We don't act with emotion. There has to be this balance of emotion and intellect, emotion and intellect, emotion and intellect. If you have no emotion whatsoever, then you're just a cold-hearted stone, intellectual, cerebral stone. So you have to have emotion, but you cannot be, it's the worst thing is to be controlled by your emotion, to be dictated to by your emotion. And it seemed like Moshe did it. So the answer to the question is that why did Moshe act with emotion and abandon his position as a royal prince of Egypt and give up everything? Was because he was emulating somebody. He was emulating his mom. He was emulating his biological mom he lost contact with, right? Well, we think, we're not sure. But his mother, his adopted mother, who he called mom, he was emulating her. He realized what she did for him, and that taught him what he has to do for others. Let's analyze his mother. His mother, an Egyptian princess. Her father is the tyrant, the king of Egypt, which controlled much of the world. Her father came out with a decree. Every boy that is born gets thrown in the Nile, gets drowned. It's thrown in the Nile Delta. So, certain parts of the Nile Delta had children taking their last breath, and certain parts of the Nile Delta had yacht races and the elite swimming and bathing. And so she was bathing. The palace was on the Nile Delta. She was bathing in a certain section, and she hears a baby cry. She takes this, she reaches out, stretches out her hand, she brings forth this basket, opens it up. She sees that this is a boy that's circumcised. It's a Jew. Wearing Hebrew clothing. It's a Jew. And she goes, oh my goodness. Miyalde ho'ivrim zeh. This is a Jewish child. What should she have done with that child? The last thing you would think she would do was keep it. Her own father, the king of Egypt, made a decree. Every Jewish boy gets drowned. We need to stop an insurrection. We need to stop a ruler, a leader from being born and from being raised. Stop it. She was the daughter of this guy. What she should have done was tip the basket. Kill the kid. What she could have done, if she was so full of emotion, is call an Egyptian family and say, here's $1,000. Shh, let's pretend this never happened. Or leave it in the Nile and pretend and let fate happen. Let fate, dictate. Come what may. But she didn't. She decided that she's going to keep this baby. It's insane. Can you imagine the daughter of Stalin telling her father, Dad, I'm an anti-Stalinist. I'm not keeping your rules. Right? I'm not keeping I'm not. She would have been dead in seconds. Dead in seconds. Right? She would have been dead. Her ashes burned, as Stalin did. Kill him, and you burn him. And then you take a shovel and just throw the ashes into the street. And that's what would have happened to her. And I guarantee you, Hitler's kid, if Hitler's kid told his father, you're a maniac, you are a bastard, you are a wicked Nazi, right? Hitler would have looked at him and said, Ja, du bist ein fluchtender Jud. You are, like a light-hearted Jew, and he would have killed him. Gefluchtene, whatever. She didn't do it. She kept him. I mean, it's miraculous that Moses was not killed right then and there. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. But she didn't do it. She acted on impulse. This is the child. I'm not going to kill this child. It was a fanatical thing to do. To go against her father. To work on emotion only. Logic dictates. Kill the kid. Get rid of the kids. Right? Get rid of the kid. Emotions told her, I can't. I found this kid. Oh my goodness, it's such a cutie. Right? I want this kid as my own. That's emotions. She went with her emotions and she had everything to lose. Pharaoh could have taken the kid and thrown it off the roof. Pharaoh could have taken her and thrown her off the roof. Pharaoh could have killed the kid. Pharaoh could have killed her. Just drowned her in the Nile with the kid. Right? Tied her to a brick and said, you want the kid so bad? Here it is. Father was a tyrant. He had no qualms about killing people. She had everything to lose. Very little to gain. But yet she risked it because of emotion. And when Moshe heard the story from his mom, Mom said I had everything to lose, Moshe. I had really very little to gain, and there was very, very slim chance I could help you. But I'm going to do it anyway. Moshe said, wow, my mom drew me out of the water. My mom drew me out of the water. And she reminded me of this fact that she saved me against all odds by calling me by my name because he was drawn out of the water. Well, Mom, I may not share your DNA. I may not be your biological child, but in tribute to you, I'm going to be like you. I'm going to act like you. And I'm going to save people out of emotion. And when Moshe was given the chance, he thought of his name, he thought of his mother, and he killed the Egyptian. It was an emotional, fanatical, impulsive move. But guess what? His mother also did an emotional, impulsive, fanatical move. And she instilled this in him. Moshe, you can't always think with logic. You cannot always think of logic. You have to also think emotionally. There comes a time when we heed a certain call. It's a song, right? Where you got to act. It's not time for thought. It's not time to process. You would die, Moshe. Moshe said to himself, this Hebrew slave, who was a skunk, by the way, would have died. I gotta act. And because Moshe emulated his mom, and in honor and in tribute of his mom, God kept the name that she gave. Moshe is a constant reminder that you were saved when it was an insane thing to do. Tuvia, God is good, or Moses is good, others can do that. Others can be a Tuvia. Moshe, you were drawn out of the water. An illogical move, that's a unicorn, Unicorn, uni, comes from the word unique. It's just, it never happens. Learn a lesson from this. And Moshe did. He lived up to his name. He lived up to his mother. It was in tribute to his mother. And we learn an incredible lesson which Susan has already done. Susan wrote in the comments, right? That you cannot always think the logical thing. If you have a chance to help somebody, it may not be the best thing for your career, but it may save somebody's life. But it may save somebody's life. And think about it, and it's worth it. And it's worth it to do so. My goodness. Don't give it a second thought. Moshe didn't. His mother didn't. And neither should we. We shouldn't say to ourselves, what can I do about it? I'm impotent. Pharaoh came out with this decree. There's nothing I can do. There is something I can do. Oh, this poor Hebrew is being beaten to death, but there's nothing I can do. Yeah? There is something you can do. Moshe proved it to us. To his own detriment, by the way. He proved it to us. There is something you can do. You can't just put on blinders and say, hear no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. No. No. This is the lesson. Do what you can do. Shouldn't just say, who am I? Shouldn't just say, what can I do? You shouldn't just say, there's a bigger picture here. Moshe taught us no, no, and no. Bisya taught us no, no, and no. And because Bisya did this act, her name was changed from Bisya, which I don't know what it means, to Basya, means the daughter of God. She was Bisya, the daughter of this tyrant. God said, She did an incredibly selfless act to the point of courage where she could have been killed. Self-sacrifice. She's no longer the daughter of Pharaoh. She's my daughter. Right? Being known as the daughter of a tyrant, the daughter of Hitler, won't get you too far. I mean, it will with the white supremacists, but it won't get you too far. Being known as a daughter of God, you were given that name by God. She goes down in history as being an incredibly lofty and holy person. And may her soul be remembered for good things. May she bask in the glory of the divine presence. She saved our master, our mentor, our teacher, our leader Moshe. And God recognized it by giving her the name of Basya. So now we know why the name is kept in the Torah Moshe. Because his name is a lesson. His name is the very lesson. His name is what made him a leader. His name is what teaches us how to conduct our life. You see somebody suffering, you see somebody trip. I was the other day at the airport, and it was waiting in line at Hertz. It was a long line. Thrifty had no line, by the way. Fox Rent-A-Car had no line. Hertz had a long line. And somebody went under, an elderly gentleman went under, the poles. I forget what they're called. It's a rope and column. I forget what they're called. The ballards or whatever they are. And he went underneath and he fell flat on his face. I was in the middle of an interaction. It was actually at the counter. It was a long line, but I was finally at the counter. So I ran and I helped this guy up. And I just didn't think about him. And I helped him up and I went back to my place. When I went back to my place, I realized I'd left my wallet on the counter. I'd left my credit card on the counter. My license was on the counter. I just left it because I didn't think. Now, I could have grabbed it and ran, but I didn't think. It wasn't the smartest move, but the idea is I moved. And I helped him get up. Check him for trouble. That's Moshe's lesson, is that we got to do it. So God wants to constantly remind us 680 times. Be a Moses, be a Moses, be a Moses, be a Moses. Don't you be the one who looks away. Don't you be the one who just sees a crash and goes, or somebody's waving you down, help, help. Or somebody sends you a message, help me. To say, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting involved. Too many times. There was a school bus that one time passed me on the street outside the Chai Center. School bus. I don't know which school bus it was, and it said, F you Jew. I could have said, okay, F you Jew. I said, this is a school bus. I took the number down. Bus, whatever number it was. I called the transportation, Hafal Hills Transportation, and they said it's elementary school. I said, elementary school? Now I'm really getting involved. And I tracked down the school. I tracked down the principal. I tracked down the kid. And I made that kid suffer. He had to apologize. He had to take a class with me about why he said what he said was wrong. He had to meet me in my office. I could have ignored it. I could have just said, another one. The world is not lacking in anti-Semites. But I didn't. I'm not a kid. If he's going to hate me, he's going to hate me for a reason. He's not going to hate me because he's parroting his parents or his Uncle Tom or his uncle or his Aunt Janine. Not going to happen. So we got to learn not to ignore, to stand up, and most importantly, to act. If you enjoyed this class, please share it with others. Today's part 2, so you can share both parts. If you'd like to see myself giving other classes, 300 other classes, I could be found on Spotify under the Chai Academy, YouTube under the Chai Academy. I could be found on the ChaiCenter.com/academy. And if you would like to make a donation at any time to help us keep not the Chai Academy alive, but the Chai Center, a stable organization, then it's the ChaiCenter.com /donate. God bless. Shabbat Shalom. We'll play again.